Hey there you guys, real quick, this is Editing Levi with a quick little footnote. This profile was recorded and uploaded about a day or so before the Unwavering / ban went through. So if you're watching this past August 19th, 2022, do not copy it card for card. Do not put Unwavering / in your deck. That card is banned as of the time being. I still wanted to get the profile out though, and I'll probably have an updated version with a few card changes and of course Unwavering swapped out for something else in the near future. But for now, this is the deck I've been playing and I wanted to share it with you guys. Enjoy the video. Thank you. Welcome my friends to another Alliteration Gaming deck profile. My name is Levi and today I have my favorite deck to play right now and probably my favorite deck so far in the game that I've played, and it's going to be Eraserhead on the all symbol specifically. So this is a really cool deck that I've kind of been handcrafting and working on for a very long time now. It's kind of like it's a lot like my all stain weapons deck if you watch that profile, and it's simply evolved into Eraserhead simply because, well, Eraserhead, when I first got into the game, wasn't a character that was even on my radar at all because of how like high skill cap, high skill ceiling he was. Very intimidating for a new player, so I wasn't going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And then as I got more and more into the game, I realized that I really like blocking, I really like defensive playstyles, tempo, mid-range, things like that. I very much found my way into that niche of the interactions in the MHA card game. Blocking is easily my favorite thing to do in this game, and this guy blocks a lot. But even then, as I evolved and grew as a player and, you know, kind of left the very aggressive, fast-paced player I was back in set 1, evolved into a more defensive mid-range player in set 2, there were always people around me playing Eraserhead as well. So again, it was just not something that I was ever on my radar, and it wasn't until one day I was kind of just thinking, man, this stain deck would be really sick if I just slapped Eraserhead on top of it, wouldn't it? Like I was like, the defense would just be insane, wouldn't it? And so I put it together, and yeah, the defense is insane. I've been fine-tuning it and crafting it to perfection since then, and it's easily one of the coolest decks that I've ever played in this game. In a card game overall, it's very interactive. It's very back and forth. There's a lot of sequencing and combos, and the decision making is absolutely insane. So if you like a real brain churner of a deck, this is gonna be a good one for you. This is a very meaty deck. So enough rambling. Let's get right into the profile. So the first thing, so I'm gonna kick this out the way, but I'm actually gonna leave this here because you really cannot talk about Eraserhead without talking about Erase. So Eraserhead is a character. He's a 7-hand size, 19 health character with a lot of things going on. The first thing that you get to do with him, even before the game begins, you get to take a copy of Erase and stick it in your discard pile. And then you'll understand immediately why that's relevant, because his first enhance is you can discard a card from your hand to give an attack +2 or -2 speed, and then add an Erase from your discard pile to your hand. So keep in mind, the discarding a card is the cost, meaning you can do that without an Erase in there and then pick up an Erase, meaning you can discard Erase and pick up Erase for just a free +2 or -2 speed to everything. So that's easily the craziest part about this character, is everything is super fast on his end, and then when you're attacking him, everything is super slow on your end. It's very powerful. So yeah, he's just a, like, the basis of this deck is you are just a 7-hander with +2 and -2 speed to everything, and you use that on the all symbol with the powerful strings that the weapons can make, and the blocking shenanigans and the defensive plays to just survive forever until you just throw a huge string of weapon attacks at them. And then the other ability on Eraserhead is a response that after you play or block with an action, you can commit him to draw 2 cards. This is also very powerful, effectively making you a 9-hander in a lot of ways. So once again, 9-hander with +2, -2 speed to everything is just kind of the whole basis of what this deck is built upon, and it's really powerful, especially since we have actions in here that aren't just Erase. We have a lot of plays. But now let's talk about Erase itself. So Erase is an action with it's a 1 mid block with breaker 1, so obviously already very powerful. Essentially, as Eraserhead, you have an infinitely recurrable 1 mid block with breaker 1 as long as you have more of them in your discard pile or you aren't needed to use them. So you never actually have to hold mid blocks in this deck for the most part. You can always just hold whatever highs and lows you need and then dedicate 1 slot in your hand to looping Erase until they finally swing mid at you. Then you get to perfect block them with a breaker 1, because like anything with -2 speed on your 1 mid block is going to be like effortlessly easy. Back alley haymakers, unwavering slashes, so many good mid attacks that they want to send at you. and it's an effortless block, and it really makes it hard to even imagine like swinging mid into Eraser sometimes. But Eraser is a lot more than just a one mid block with Breaker 1. It also can enhance, it can remove itself to seal a rival asset or foundation. This is obviously extremely powerful because, you know, you can recur it anytime you need with Eraserhead. So obviously you want to always make sure you're leaving yourself an erase so you can do your looping. But when you have extra erases, they can be very, very pivotal survival or execution pieces because you have an on-demand seal of any asset or foundation you need. It's such a crazy powerful ability. And then the main draw of it is the other ability on it, which is the Eraserhead only response. After an attack is played, so your attack or your rival's attack, you can play this, and your rival cannot play abilities on their character during this attack, and then you discard it from your card pool. So if you have enough erases and enough cards in hand, you can essentially erase them. They play an attack, you erase them, it discards, you pick it back up, they play the next attack, erase them, discard, etc., etc. So you can keep them erased for like their entire attack string. It's very, very taxing though. It's going to take a lot of cards in your hand, and it's going to take it's kind of mimics how Eraserhead can only erase for so long in the anime. You know, you're wearing yourself out, your eyes are drying out, right? But that's not really this ability is very, very powerful. You use it when it's extremely relevant and when it's intelligent. It doesn't stop everything though. It's only abilities during the attack. So like responses that happen when they play an attack, such as Jiro's responses, or things that happen upon resolution, like Bakugo or Ochako's responses, you do not stop. So there's like a whole library of things that erase does and does not stop. It's a bit of a complex interaction, but you use it on really, really, really pivotal things that are going to be worth it. But for the most part, this deck is really just all about leveraging Eraserhead as a 9-hand size character, 9-hand size character, if you will, with infinite speed recursion and mid blocks, and that is really, really the main draw of him. But we have a whole rest of the deck to get into, so let me move this man out the way and we're going to talk about some attacks. So yes, this is on the all symbol. We are very much built around the weapon package because I feel like it is very, very synergistic with Eraserhead. So the first thing we have is 4 copies of Unwavering Slash. This is such a powerful card, man. It is a 5 diff, it's a 4 mid for 4. You can discard a card to build any asset from your discard pile, and then if you have an asset, you can ready a foundation and draw a card. It also has powerful 2 and a +2 low block. This card does everything we want it to do for the purposes of a weapon in this whole package. It recurs our assets, which are a very, very important part of this deck, especially for our deadlock threats. It replaces itself by drawing a card. You make it a 6 mid for 4 as Eraser, which is actually a really annoying poke to deal with. And then in certain situations, if you've built up your momentum, it can be a powerful bomb with a powerful 2. Don't sleep on it. This card does a ton of things in this deck, and it's a really important piece of our overall weapon package. So the next move I want to talk about is probably my favorite attack in the deck. It's 4 copies of Binding Cloth Assault. This is a 4 diff 3 mid for 5 with 2 very powerful abilities. One is a combo enhance with a weapon to let you discard a card and draw 2 cards, and then if you've played an action this turn, it gets +2 speed. So this card's really, really, really good. This is like our our tempo attack, but it can also be a finisher in tandem with other things that line up in the deck. The second you play an action, it's a very, very easy 7 speed attack because of Eraserhead, right? +2 from its own effect, +2 from Eraserhead. Really, 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 really strong, and then just is always going to be a +1 in terms of card advantage. Next, we have 4 copies of Create Capture Net. This is a 4 diff attack. It's a 2 low for 4 charge and weapon. It combos with a foundation to gain stun 2, and then you can build a foundation from your card pool face up. So this card is really sick. We do run Quick Create in this deck. It's our main asset, so we can do a lot of really, really cool plays there. And in general, this just kind of lets us have like it's just free stun basically. Eraserhead makes it a 4 low for 4, which is actually kind of annoying to deal with. You can use the Quick Create. You can build things in. You can bring them down and kind of leverage past your 7 or 9 hand size, if you will, in a lot of scenarios. And it's an attack that sets up our bigger attacks, but also accrues us minor advantage along the way, because this deck's whole attack style is kind of like poke them until they're in a position where something is unblockable, and then you just like damage pump the heck out of it and bomb them with it. That's kind of this whole deck's attack strategy, and I think the weapons really support that. Next, we've got a non-weapon. The only non-weapon in the deck is 3 copies of Electromagnetic Stomp. This is a kick attack. It's a 4 low for 4 on a 4 diff with a 1 low block, so it really does a lot of things that we like. So it's got stun 1, and then if it goes into the momentum, it goes face up, and then you can commit a foundation to add it to your hand from the momentum, kind of like a meteor shower, and then you can also lose 2 health to ready one of your assets. So this card does a lot of things. It's a 1 low block, which is very valuable in our deck. It's a low attack itself. It's a 6 low for 4 that stuns 1. It's effectively like a 7 low in a lot of scenarios, so it's almost always going to hit, go to momentum, and then it's going to be a recurable low block from the momentum because the ability to pick it up by coming to foundation is on either player's turn. So when you think about it, Eraserhead will always grab you a mid block if you need. This is the emergency low block if you need it, and then the majority of the deck is high blocks. I think this is a 70 card deck with I think 30 high blocks in it, so it's very heavy on the high blocks because you have Eraserhead for all the mids and you have Stomp for all the lows. And then the losing 2 health already an asset is really powerful when they're in deadlock and our quick creates are popping off, or just to re-ready our quick creates, our boxes of babies for more damage pump when we're stringing along our kill turns and just getting kind of extra use out of them. Then next we have super duper cool attack right here. We've got 2 copies of Binding Cloth Capture. This is a 5 diff, 4 low for 5 weapon attack. It combos with a combo, and if you played an action this turn, it gets -2 difficulty. So it's a 3 diff move, and it says if you have played an action this turn, your rival discards a card. That's our combo enhance, and then just flat out enhance seal a rival foundation. It's also a 1 high block. So this card is really fantastic for a lot of reasons. Basically, if you can get your opponent down to their last card in hand, you can play this, discard it, and then damage pump this like crazy, and then it's going to be an unblockable bomb because they have no hand anymore. You can also just throw it down at the beginning of a string to seal something really important, like a release or a struggling with studies or maybe a wall cling or something like that. It's really flexible. We have a lot of combos attacks in the deck. We have 8 of them right here, and we have 2 more attacks to show you, and they are combos, and of course it can combo with itself on a combo. So we have a lot of ways to proc our combo. It's just a really strong piece and a great block as well. One of the most important things you'll notice as we're going through this deck is all of the cards are really built upon their block zones with Eraserhead in mind. I don't want to have a lot of mid blocks in my deck because Eraserhead is going to always grab me a mid block for the most part. So I really want to be able to hold attacks that are highs and lows, especially my attacks, because this deck sculpts a lot. You're not going to attack a lot in the early game, and when you don't, you really want to be able to hold. You're going to be holding your attacks a lot of the time, so you want them to be your really good blocks. We have the last 2 attacks in the deck, which are 2 copies of Piercing Descent. This is a 4 diff weapon attack. It combos with a weapon. It's only a 2 high, but for 5 damage, and its combo enhance gives it 2 more damage, and if it hits, they lose a health. So it's effectively an 8 damage move. Eraserhead makes it a 4 high for 8 essentially, which is pretty strong. It's like fairly, it's certainly within the realm of blockable. This is more so made to come in at like the end of the string when you've really exhausted all of their resources, and it just comes in as a big damage move. If you Sugar Rush it, it's even more powerful. Spoiler alert, Sugar Rush is a big part of the offense in this deck, and it really crafts a lot of these attacks as well. But we'll talk more about that when we get there, but this is a great target for it, and it's also just a really nice 1 low block. So I have a lot of 1 lows. I have a lot of really good high and low blocks within my attack lineup, which while I'm sculpting, I'm going to be discarding my attacks most of the time, so it's really good that I can go ahead and actually hold on to those good block zones while I'm sculpting in case I do need to block with them and keep myself alive. And so that's all the attack cards in the deck. It is 19 attacks in a 70 card deck, essentially a 69 card deck because one of your erases starts in your discard pile, but it is a low number of attacks for the size of the deck. But again, because of all your cards that filter, you're gonna be able to see a lot of your attacks, and you really want to see a lot of your foundations early on because you're trying to build for a while before you really start going in with this deck. Hey you like the My Hero Academia collectible card game, right? If the answer is at least a resounding probably, you should head right on over to unfunstuff.com for all of your MHA CCG purchasing needs. We've got the new set Heroes Clash on pre-order, as well as the new DLC 2 in stock. And if you want to use coupon code Wealthy Aspirations, you can get 5% off your entire freaking order and also support old Levi a little bit along the way. The link for all this is going to be right down in the description below, so get on over there and go get yourself some amazing product from some amazing people. Back to the video. So let's get into our big meaty chunk of foundations. First thing we got is 4 copies of Specialist of Sound. This is a really powerful card. It's a response that when they play an attack, you commit it to give it -3 speed. And then when you check it, when you perform your check and you flip this card, you can reveal the top card of your deck if you'd like. So that's a very powerful interaction as well. But the main thing is this is just repeatable, consistent speed reduction in a character that already gives -2 speed on everything. So they really have to fight through all of your Specialist of Sounds before like they can really actually start thinking about putting a meaningful attack on the board, because every one of these just says, hey, I can -5 speed to your attack, which is probably going to be almost all of your speed. So then even if my block modifier is bad, it's going to be super easy to stop your attack. So obviously really, really powerful card. I think this is one of the main draws about playing the all symbol over void, is that you have a really consistent speed reduction. Next, I have 4 copies of Challenging the Fakes. If there's anything more busted than speed reduction in Eraserhead, it is check hacking in Eraserhead. So this card says flip, the attack gets -1 damage, and then if it's not blocked, your rival's next check to play an attack gets -2. They are allowed to fail this check without ending their combat phase. So this is a really powerful card. Originally, I didn't think this card was going to be very good in a deck like Eraserhead because, well, I want to block a lot. What do you mean I have to take the attack? But mostly, you use this in tandem with cards like Spooky and then quick create damage reduction and stuff like that to essentially make moves 0 damage or very, very small damage, shrug them off, and then make their next check suck, taxing them out of the card, out of a card from the hand. It's a really, really powerful defensive piece, and it's one of my favorite cards in the deck. The block modifier is obviously the main drawback of the card, being a +4 mid, but you will almost never have to block with that as Eraserhead because you are always grabbing your erases as your mid block. Next, we have 4 copies of Villains Defeated, another one of the very powerful defensive pieces in this deck. This card says that you can flip it after blocking an attack to remove the attack and gain 2 health. Then also, if your rival makes you discard any number of cards, you can flip it to draw a card. But for the most part, we use this to remove stuff like their throws or their electric jolt or things like that, just to deny our opponent momentum. We can also mess up their combos if we foresee things like that coming. And it's also just a source of healing in our 19 health character, which is very, very powerful. The non-spams in this deck are really, really, really powerful. And they're one of the main reasons why, if you haven't noticed, we don't have anything like Dropkick Slicer or Sinister Paralyzation or Specialized Sound Waves, because it's really hard to run 1 and 2 checks in this deck, because your non-spams in the all symbol on a defensive deck like this are so important that you really can't craft a foundation lineup that's built to build around them on turn 1. So we have to play a much more honest attack package because these 2 diffs are just so important in our game plan. Speaking of, we have probably the most important one, 3 copies of Spooky. This is a unique foundation that says you can commit it to swap the speed and damage of your rival's attack. This card is crazy in Eraserhead because remember, everything has -2 speed. You can go -3 with a Specialist of Sound, and then boom, that is immediately just like a 0 damage move right then and there. Flip challenging, I'll take 0, I'll make your next check suck. As our 19 health character that wants to play a long game, this is our main answer to throws. If they don't have a way to deal with this, it's going to be really, really, really hard for them to play around it, because you're effectively negating, like you're negating 1 attack every turn more or less with like this Eraserhead and Specialist of Sound, or even just a little extra minor damage reduction like your quick creates. As Eraserhead, you're just going to hold like all the right block zones, but when they do catch you with the wrong block zone, you just say, okay, well, I'll Spooky it, so I'll just take none. It's kind of like your failsafe in case they double up on a zone that you didn't hold for. Next, we have 3 copies of Hero Killer. This is a very, very sick foundation. This card says when your rival builds or unflips a foundation, you can remove this to remove that foundation. But the main thing we play it for is our Deadlock First Form, which lets us remove it to give our weapon attack stun 2 for the entire combat phase. This is the first form, so you get to like look at your hand and see, okay, am I going to go in this turn before you actually decide to commit to this, which is really, really nice. And this is just the beginning of a lot of things that say our opponent is not allowed to go to Deadlock against this deck. That is one of the most powerful parts about this deck, is it is an Eraserhead deck that you cannot go into Deadlock against, and that is so potent. Like, you're literally not allowed to. I've killed people on 25 foundations with 5 cards in hand because of deadlocks like this, and then things like quick create, and that you'll see later on. It's really not an option that you have against a deck like this, and I think it's one of the most polarizing things about playing Eraserhead on the all symbol as opposed to the much more popular void symbol. Next, again, another great deadlock threat, but also just a great card in general. We've got 2 copies of Nightwatch. This card says it's once again a unique foundation that says you can respond to remove itself and an action card from your discard pile to cancel a non-character enhance. And then you, as a deadlock form, you can flip it and pick up a combo attack from your card pool. So the deadlock's obviously crazy because you can pick up any of these really, really potent moves to just replay and also clear your progressive, which is nuts. But the main thing it's here for is just our response, being able to cancel anything that's like threatening to us, because the whole thing about this deck is you want to be prepared for anything and everything, but sometimes things will come up that you just weren't ready for, you couldn't play around. This is just like your emergency button against anything that you weren't ready for, and it's really, really valuable in that. I kind of wish I could fit more, but there's already a lot of 2 diffs in this deck, and it's also unique, so I don't want to stack them. I'm already playing a 3 of unique with Spooky because it's just such an important card to see. This one's a little less important, but still a very pivotal piece of our survival game plan. Anything that just comes in a threat and is like, oh, I didn't hold this low block, this 1.5 1.3 is going to kill me. No, I won't gain any damage. You know, just so many things. A non-character enhance is such a wide array of things. It also cancels really problematic deadlocks for us, because when you're playing this deck, you are almost always going to be building into deadlock pretty quickly. So it protects us from such potent things like that as well. Now to move on with the spams, we've got 4 copies of Mediator. This card is cracked as a spam. It says you can destroy it to give an attack -3 speed. Then if you've played an action card this turn, you can draw a card. So this is wild, because like destroy for -3 speed is already a pretty good exchange. But then if you played an action, you draw, which it says if you played an action card, not played an action. So if you block with an action card that is playing an action card, you just didn't play it as an action, but you still played the card that was an action. Makes sense? Meaning you can block with one of your actions and then pop this for -3 speed and draw on your rival's turn. It is so much defensive power. Again, just extending the amount of cards that we get. And again, -3 speed, -2 speed, -3 speed, -2 speed. You're stacking all these -5 speeds that it's like, man, he's got all the cards and all the speed reduction. You kind of just have to hope to catch Eraserhead with the wrong block zones eventually is your main way of how am I going to deal damage to this guy. Again, it's very, very polarizing, and it doesn't have a great block mod. If you'll notice, a lot of these cards do not have great block mods. That's kind of where the equalizer of the -2 speed on everything comes in, because a lot of times you're needed to use like a 3 low or a 2 high or a 3 high or something like that. But when you have so much speed reduction, it almost does not matter. Next, we have 3 copies of Preparing for Battle. This card is basically just in here because it's a low block with Breaker 1, but it does say you can commit it to discard a card and draw a card, which is really handy when we like open with an Unwavering and we bank the 5 check. We can commit this to discard and draw. We can ready this to draw. It's also cool because like you can pitch a card, grab your erase, and then discard your erase to draw a card and try and dig for better stuff like that. But it is mostly in here as a low block with Breaker 1. Again, it's not a great one, but we have so much speed reduction it almost never matters. Next, we have 2 copies of Zoom. This card has an all response that says when the combat phase begins, you can reveal the top card of your deck, and it's got a deadlock form to look at your rival's hand by flipping it. So this is also mostly just a low block in the deck. The low blocks in the all symbol are pretty sparse, all things considered, but this is a handy card. It kind of lets you know like what move to open with, what might be the best way to go about it. And once again, another very, very polarizing deadlock that says, hey, you probably just can't go into that game state, bud, or my cards are just going to start getting really crazy. Then next we have a very cheeky one of. We have a one of Late Riser. This card is again mostly in there to pad out. I needed a couple cards that were a foundation and preferably a low block that were like not awful in the deck, and that's where these 3 came in mostly, because that's a +4 low block. This card is pretty unplayable block-wise most of the time, but it's got some cool abilities. It says when you discard it from your hand during the enhanced step, you can give it attack +1 or -2 speed, and then it has an enhance on the board that if you've played a combo this turn, your attack gets -1 damage. So we have a lot of combos in here, so it is actually a repeatable damage pump. So it's not awful when it's on board, but for the most part, we're going to hold this as an emergency low block, or to just pitch it on a rival's attack and give us something -4 speed in total with Eraserhead and this. So it's a nice one of. I never play anything more than that. It is again rounding out the foundation count in the deck and also being a low block. Next we have our zeros. We got 4 copies of It Can't Be Fixed. This is not only a 1 high 0 diff foundation, but it also says that when you commit foundations due to your rival's effect, you can flip it to build the top card of your deck face down, and is playable while committed. So this is like our stun protection. This deck is very, very, very reliant on its board. All of these on-board pieces are how we survive. So being able to have a bit of stun protection is really, really, really nice, on top of a 0 diff foundation with a great block. Next, we've got 4 copies of Rooftop Vantage. This is kind of the same vein. It's a 2 low block on a 0, but it also says we can flip it to look at the top card of our rival's deck. So that's pretty nice. It kind of lets us set up our attacks in certain ways, decide if we're going to commit to it, or basically do the math and say, hey, best case scenario for you, is this blockable? Oh, hey, you're checking a 3. This is no longer blockable, so I'll go in on this attack because I know that you can't stop it. It has minimal interactions, but for the most part, it's our 0 with a low block. And that is all the foundations in the deck. The non-spams are very, very important to the deck. I would consider these 20 cards non-negotiable. I think these are 20 staple cards in this deck that you really just can't mess around with, which is why they're so crucial to our game plan. However, there's a lot more to our deck than just attacks and foundations, because you are definitely not seeing 70 cards right here. So first off, we do play +2 more erase in the main deck, so 1 starts in the discard pile. We play 2 more in the main deck. You do want to see more, so that way if your opponent is doubling up on their mids, you want to have those multiple erases available to you to tell them, hey, you cannot do that. You can look at this erase in my discard pile. You know I'm going to pick it up. You know your attack is going to be slow and blockable. I'm just going to keep Breaker 1 perfect, blocking you till the end of time. And then also you want more available to you so that you can actually do the on-demand seals when you're in a pinch, or if you just want to trigger something like Cloth Capture or Cloth Assault, and erasing their character doesn't give you value in that scenario. The other action in the deck is probably the most important card. I don't think this deck could exist without this card. We're playing 4 copies of Sugar Rush Power Up in this deck. This is our finisher in the deck. So this is like what Void Eraser lacks in Damage Pump. This is where it comes in. This is how we beat people up with this deck. So this is a 1 diff action with a 1 high block that has 2 enhances. The first one is you remove it and remove 10 cards from your discard pile to give an attack 2 speed and 4 damage. Very, very, very strong. The second one is a little more niche. It says on your attack you can remove it to flip a rival foundation with an ability that reduces damage. So that also recognizes the potential to reduce damage, so you can flip things like Spooky, you can flip things like Creepy Realization, you can flip things like Challenging the Fakes. There's definitely some good flip targets on that second ability, but for the most part, this is your finisher. Eraserhead stacking 2 speed on everything. This stacking 2 speed on something can make a move really, really unblockable, and then you just commit with these and damage pump it to hell and back. And then you just commit all your resources to damage pump a move like freaking crazy with this attack right here, or with this action right here. It's a great way to turn on stuff like Binding Cloth Capture and Cloth Assault on your lethal turns. Cloth Assault, this is also one of my favorite like tempo plays, because on turn 2, if you can recognize at some point that a 9 mid is unblockable, you can cast it on your Binding Cloth Assault. It'll become a 3 speed move, +2 from this, so go to 5, +2 from Eraserhead, go to 7, +2 because you played action. It'll become a 9 mid for 9 that is just a really, really meaty chunk of damage in the mid game, and then just sets you up to really, really deal out the rest of that damage on a later really, really big string turn. It's just a fantastic move. Mid game, late game, it's your finisher. It's one of your tempo cards. Also, it's an action with a 1 high block, meaning you can 1 high block their move and then respond to Eraserhead to draw 2 cards, which is just crazy. And then it also turns your Mediators on. So like you can't really play around the not swinging mid to stop stuff like the card draw and the Mediators from becoming online, because this is just a 1 high block you can do the same thing with. And that is really, really crazy, ladies and gentlemen. And then now for our green cards, we have our assets. We have 4 copies of Quick Creation. This is easily one of the most important cards in the deck. Again, I think this card is very crucial to our game plan. So first of all, it's a 2 mid with Breaker 1. We're almost always going to build that card, so it's not very relevant. But it does have 2 very relevant enhances. The first is to add the top card of the discard pile to your card pool to give an attack +2 or -2 damage as a commit cost. The second is a Deadlock first enhance to commit and double our weapon's speed and damage. So once you have a few of these on board, again, combined with stuff like this, your opponent is not allowed to go into Deadlock. Your moves will become so big and so fast, it is extremely unfair, and there's really not any like, it's inevitable as well, right? Because your unwavering slashes are eventually just going to acquire you all of your quick creates, and you're really just trying to set these all up over the course of the game. And then the damage pump, again, it's the same thing, right? You sugar rush something on the end. Once something becomes unblockable, you play your last move, commit all your quick creates, give it 2, 4, 6, 8 damage, play a Sugar Rush on it, and then just throw this Hail Mary that they can't stop. And the damage reduction is also a very, very important part of lining out things like we give Spooky to make their speed super slow, commit, make them like a 1 or 2 damage move, stack our quick creates to make them 0, and the quick creates just help you round out that 0 damage, especially if your opponent has like incidental damage pump here and there. It helps round it out to make sure it stays to 0, or if you just hold them all, perfect block everything, they play their last move, it's going to have at least minus damage equal to however many quick creates you have on board, right? So this card just does a lot of things, especially once you get multiples of them on the board. It just tells your opponent they have to play the game in very different ways, because if they play an attack at the end of a string, they have to keep in mind it has minus this much damage, or if they block until they can't block something anymore, they have to keep in mind that any last attack played could have plus X damage based on how many quick creates are on the board. And then rounding out the assets is 2 copies of Box Full of Babies. Honestly, if it wasn't for Unwavering Slash, these probably wouldn't be in the deck. 6 assets is the perfect number asset-wise to always see one turn 1 if you draw an Unwavering. I have never not had an asset turn 1 with an Unwavering in hand turn 1. It's literally never happened in the hundreds of games I've played with this deck. So 6 is the consistency number for the assets in this deck to make sure you always get to do Unwavering things. But when it's not just being an asset to pick up, it does have some pretty relevant text. It's got 2 enhances. The first one is you draw a card and then discard a card if you're not Hatsume Mei. So you're obviously not Hatsume Mei, so it's just a filter. And then you can commit it to give a weapon weapon attack, 1 speed, and 1 damage. So this is pretty nice. Again, it makes it really easy to throw your pokes at them, because if you have a couple of these on board, suddenly things get a little faster and a little bigger. And then it's also just more card filtering. Another really cool thing about stuff like this in the deck is between this and Eraserhead, you can always control the top card of your discard pile, meaning you can always put in whatever you need with Quick Create, which can lead to some really cool plays with stuff like Capture Net, building foundations down from the card pool. It makes it's really, really cool to be able to play a move, Quick Create, play a move, discard whatever foundation you want, pick up your erase, Quick Create, put that foundation into the card pool, then play a Capture Net on a 4, 5, 6, get a free stun 2, and then get a free build as you went +1 in the grand scheme of things. So a lot of really cool plays like that where you're able to control the top of your discard pile and make cool things happen with the Quick Creates. And guys, that is the entire deck. I do have a sideboard that I want to go over as well, so we'll get right into that in a moment. But I kind of want to talk about more about the philosophy of this deck, especially in compared to, because this character is almost always played on the Void symbol. But honestly, after playing this deck a lot, the Void Eraserhead deck feels very, very outdated. This one, the defensive shenanigans are just so much stronger, and the attack lines with the weapon package is just so much cleaner. And then stuff like Sugar Rush and Quick Create just like really manipulate the game state to a point where your opponent cannot play the way they want to. And you still have a lot of the really, really powerful Void options, stuff like Spooky and Night Watch and all, and Villains Defeated. But I think the inclusion of all the deadlock threats with stuff like Hero Killer and Quick Create are really what pushed this deck over the edge compared to the other version, because the concept of an Eraserhead deck that you can't go to deadlock against, I cannot stress this enough, is ridiculously powerful. So guys, let's talk about the sideboard now. So the first thing in the sideboard is going to be Mei Hatsume as a character card, along with 2 more boxes of babies. So Mei Hatsume, why is she in here? Basically, this character card is essentially just your side out option when you just are on a matchup where you don't really want to be Eraserhead against decks that are like, if for example, if I'm fighting something that wants to turn to me and then they're going first in game 2 or game 3, I'm probably going to side into this character to just have that chunkier health pool. She's a little slower to get started as far as stuff like your hand size goes, but it's a much safer side so that you don't just get like nuked out of nowhere really fast before you have a chance to play the game. It's like a little extra padding, if that makes sense. And you're already maining the 2 boxes of babies. Being able to just side in 2 more to have all 4 is really, really easy. She already interacts really well because she damage pumps weapon attacks. We're almost all weapon attacks, right? Or we're weapon or tech attacks. So she can damage pump all of our attacks, and she can do a lot of the same shenanigans that we do as well. We just have to do a couple things to make siding into her a little easier. And one of those first things that we do is we've got 2 copies of Expert Flurry in the sideboard. So this is a attack that says combo enhance with an attack to discard arrival momentum, and you can give your next attack +2 damage as an enhance. So this kind of serves 2 purposes. It comes in as momentum hate, usually replacing the piercing descent, or if we're siding into Hatsume, I'm going to side out the binding cloth captures for this, because we want to get this card that's very reliant on us playing an action out of the deck. This one is also reliant on an action, but it's still good as a plus and a filter even without it. But this card, I usually never want to play this card as a 5 diff move, so when I'm siding into Hatsume and I don't have the on-demand action pickup as Eraserhead, I don't really want this card in my deck, so that's when the Expert Flurries come in, or they just come in if you need some momentum hate, replacing something like the Piercing Descent probably. Or if they're a character that has a lot of draw power, I might also side out this card, because this card's at its best when you can make it their last card in hand and then take it away from them and then just send in your big move for free. Next, we have 2 copies of Capture Evildoers. This card is really awesome. It says you can enhance, remove a rival momentum, and if you do remove one of your rival's momentum, you get to steal a momentum of your own, and you can also discard a momentum to clear out 3 cards from your card pool. So it's just, again, really, really nice momentum hate. Generally, if I really need it, I'll side out like maybe 1 Sugar Rush and 1 box of babies, kind of even out some of my my non-attack, non-foundation cards, just as a hate card. And then it also serves a double purpose as the action side out when you're siding from Eraserhead into Hatsume, you're going to side out your extra erases for the Capture Evildoer. So generally what you're going to do is you're going to side out your 3 erases and then some other card for your 2 evildoers and your 2 other boxes of babies. That's kind of how the side out generally goes. Then we have a 3rd copy of Night Watch. This is just really good against decks that are super reliant on a specific enhance. So, you know, things like Staff Strike decks and stuff like that that are really, really, really wanting to activate crucial abilities, or just decks that are a lot faster and a lot harder to prepare for. You want more copies of your emergency get out of jail free card in there. And then lastly in the sideboard we have 2 copies of Intimidating Presence. This is like the pro tech in the sideboard. This card says when it's in your card pool, your rival's attacks have -1 speed. That's usually not going to happen with Eraserhead because if you're going to block mid, you're blocking with an erase. But it also says when your rival readies 1 or more foundations due to an effect, you flip one of them. So this is obviously really good against stuff like Amphibious, stuff like Small and Limber. Any decks playing Requesting Assistance, they have to be careful about what they requesting assistance up. It's just a really nice control piece against them. I kind of wish I could play more, but it's kind of hard to fit more into the sideboard because May takes up so much of it. And then also, you don't want to put a ton more mid blocks into your deck as Eraserhead, so that's kind of the issue there. That is the complete deck and the sideboard. I have a couple cards that I want to talk about why they're not in the deck and why they could be in the deck, and then that'll be it. Attack-wise, Slashing Whirlwind is a very cool attack in this deck. It's a really big finisher that can come out of nowhere, and also a really good poke as a 7 mid, but you don't really poke that much in this deck as you're sculpting and building your stage. So most of the time, having this 2 momentum was a very late game type of scenario, so that's why it didn't really work out as a finisher in this deck. I'm much more reliant on just stringing together good chains of moves and then like sugar rushing and quick create damage pumping something. Net Gun Surprise is also a really cool card in this deck. You got a lot of cool defensive plays with it, and it is another stun move that can help you commit out their board as you're preparing your big moves. I think it could very well be played over the Piercing Descent. I just like this as a bit more of a finisher and then a low block as well. This being a mid block in the deck, not the most attractive thing to put in there. Then foundation wise, You're So Obvious is a really good sideboard piece if you're dealing with a lot of big statted moves in your local meta. It can be a nice emergency button. I feel like Night Watch kind of fills that purpose a little better, but this is also an option as well, and it's a low block as well. Destined for Mainstream suggests is probably the craziest non-included in this deck. This is considered one of the best staples in the game, but the more I played it, the more I realized I prioritized things with the better block zones that I liked, and a card like this just wasn't as important in a deck like Eraserhead. You're not really trying. This card helps you be really greedy with your attack lines, and that's not really how this deck plays. So it eventually made its way out of the deck in favor of things with low blocks. Celebrity Status is also another cool move in this deck because you can easily stack the momentum and then draw it with a myriad of things in your deck that draw cards. However, again, we don't poke very much, and so that move, that play wasn't as valuable to me, and it's also a mid-block foundation, so gotta get it out of there. Weights is another really cool piece that I was siding and maining for a long time, but again, in this deck you don't poke very much, so you actually don't turn it online every turn like you'd want to, so it's really not that valuable of a card in the long run. And so guys, that is everything regarding this deck. That is the main board, the sideboard, and all of the things that made their way in and out of the deck. This deck is really fun. I kind of already talked about the philosophy of the deck and why I'm playing it. I really strongly encourage you to try this deck if you're looking for a cool defensive thing to play. A cool, nice survival defensive control deck that you might have thought wasn't really in the meta but easily could be. If I was playing rather than casting in any of the recent regionals, this is definitely the deck I would have played, and I would have been really comfortable playing it and navigating it through a long day because I have a lot of experience with it, and I think it's very critical to have a lot of experience with this deck so you can play it fast and work around time constrictions in tournaments, and also play it optimally because Eraserhead is probably the hardest character to play in the game, and he's one of those characters that has such a high skill ceiling that if you play him perfectly for the entirety of an event, you're probably going to top, if not win, the whole thing. Playing him perfectly for 8 hours in a day is the hard part, but if you're looking for a challenge and you're looking for a real brain turner, this is absolutely the deck for you, and I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts and comments on it down there below. And if you really enjoyed this profile, there's going to be many more like it in the future. I've always got so much cool MHA CCG content planned, and you should stick around if you're looking forward to stuff like that. But guys, this is all the time I've got for this big chunky Eraserhead all deck profile. Thanks so much if you watched the entire thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing y'all in the next video.